So we are going to talk about a little bit about happiness and facilities, but this is based in the fact that human being is a composite of Jivan and body. Okay. So Jivan is the conscious entity and body is a physical chemical entity. Sentient and insentient. I'm coming to that. I'm saying it's based in that. Right? So, when we are doing that analysis, the last was needs. Right? And needs for happiness and facilities. And now we are expanding on those happiness and facilities. Okay? So, we had started talking about happiness is needed. When do you need happiness? So, it is needed always. This discussion we already had, that whenever you're in a state of happiness, you would want its continuity. You would not want to end it. Right? Whereas the facilities you need as per requirement, and at times when the requirement is there. Because body from time to time has certain requirements. And whenever that requirement is there, like right now, the weather is slightly hot, we are wearing this, but suppose it rains and it will become cold, and we'll probably need some warmer clothes, right? So from time to time. How much? Again, this is unlimited. You can't quantify this, right? But what about facilities? Do you need them limited amount of facilities or unlimited? Like for example, food. Do you need limited amount of food or unlimited amount of food? Yeah. So one would eat, say, somebody will eat 250 grams of food, somebody might eat half kg, somebody is very hungry might eat 1 kg. Nobody will eat 10 kgs of food, right? Not humans. Not possible. Though 10 kgs is also limited. So, food is needed in limited, or facilities are needed in limited quantity. How many clothes can you wear? At one time, one set. Right? Right? Yeah. Maybe 2 sets? Okay. But is that limited or unlimited? Limited, yeah. So clothes also you don't need. Interesting things about facilities is, the more you have, whatever facility you have for your body, just like body, you have to maintain the facility. So if you have clothes, you'll have to maintain them. If you have a house, you have to maintain that. If you have a car, you have to maintain that. And all that needs effort and time and other resources, right? So how much facilities you should keep then? Because each facility will take some amount of attention, some amount of time from you, some amount of resources from you. Like if you have a bed, how many beds can you sleep at in one time? Only one. So my one friend has a house with 10 bedrooms. So I suggested to him once, why don't you sleep in each bed in one single night, sleep in one bed, then go to the other one, then go to the other one, then go to the other one. What kind of sleep would that be? No sleep. So if you want a good sleep, you need one bed. Right? So facilities are needed in limited amount, and whatever you have to maintain. They need some energy, time, attention, money to maintain them. Okay? Source, where do they come from? Happiness comes from knowledge and evidence in living of that knowledge. Hindi words are Gyan or Praman. So when and this you can relate to very easily, when you understand something, right, it does give you some happiness. And when that knowledge you can live, that means you can give evidence of that knowledge in your living. Like if you understand that harmonious family is a good way of life, if you understand this, while you're understanding it also you will get some happiness. But it will be complete once you are able to live that. Right? So the true source of happiness is these two, knowledge and evidence in living. Any questions on this?
Sure, knowledge and evidence could lead to happiness if I am verifying something or a belief that I have or something, but reduction in happiness can also come through other means, right? So for example, if there was a tractor outside which was creating a lot of noise, or something that was making me anxious which had nothing to do with knowledge or evidence, that could also lead to a reduction in happiness. So I mean that's also source, right?
Okay. So when we talk about human life living, we are talking about things here. These are we can now look at it from a much bigger perspective than just an event. Okay, because when we look at things in form of events, there are too many conditions there, and these conditions, if you try to resolve them, the more conditions will come. But you look at a life journey, right? Look at your life journey for say last 5-10 years. Then what is the main source of happiness for you? You can say an event, we went out with friends and we had a lot of fun, that was happiness. Yeah. So when you start looking at it from the viewpoint of a journey, long-term journey, and then you're coming to a conclusions, because we have to live the full life. And it is not only limited to me, it is also going to apply to you and the others you live with. That is very important. It cannot just work for me. If it is truth, it will work for everyone. So it is a very generic thing we are talking about. We're not talking about very specific thing. Any one person could be in an event, maybe eating something could give them happiness, but it's not going to work for everyone in all situations, not even for that person. So now we should start looking at things in long term, not on event based. Okay. Yes.
Also one factor, and also I think that this knowledge is not only my knowledge, it's also the collective knowledge of the family or of the society.
Yeah. So the evidence, basically what is knowledge? Knowledge is basically awareness through observation, right? By learning. Now how do you verify this? What I know is true. The only way to verify is through living. And how does it get verified in living is, one, that it is working for me, but that is not sufficient. That is definitely needed, but it also needs to appeal to people around us. I mean, I might say my behavior is very good. I am a very good person. I can have this opinion about myself, right? And I live it, and I could be delusional to assume, okay, I'm living very well. But what is the evidence of it amongst other people? How do they consider me? That is also important, feedback. So evidence is not in one person. Evidence is always in the living together of humans. It's in the collective. And this culminates where? It culminates in from one generation to the other to the other. Whatever is being continued, we only continue the useful. We only continue from one generation to the other things which are useful for everyone, or which can be helpful for everyone, which are knowledgeable, source of knowledge for everyone, source for learning for everyone. Humankind has worked like this, right? So if my next generation or the next generation around me is ready to take it forward, then it is evidence for me that, look, I did something right. I do something and nobody is ready to take it, I could still be right. I'm not ruling out that possibility, but it will become much more happier situation if people are ready to take it forward. But again, just people taking it forward doesn't become sufficient, because followers also take things forward. So that also is not an evidence totally. So it's a combination of both. Your evaluation and evaluation of others and the common basis in between all of it. We'll go in this detail later, but it culminates in intergenerational evidence in form of tradition, human tradition. So if you look at it, humans have been able to gather knowledge and evidence for a lot of physical domain things, like for food, for clothes, for shelter. We have been able to achieve so much, right? But how to live with each other, we are still struggling, just as we were struggling thousands of years back. Right? Yes?
So the collective thing was one, and I was reminded of Rishi's example of in some years ago. You was talking about the old movies. There you would see that there would be what is the person who cuts the forest contractor? At that time was that this is a very respected work, and it's a very good work. But what was the evidence of it? I mean, over generations, there's no evidence that that work is the correct work to be done or will lead to happiness. So intergeneration, over generations, it's not proving.
Yeah.
There is no evidence of that being a good knowledge.
Yeah. So what is underlying under this is also the fact that knowledge is of truth. These are the concepts which are there in a lot of philosophy, but it's also relevant in day-to-day life. Untruth can't be source of knowledge. Illusion cannot be source of knowledge. Falsehoods can't be source of knowledge. And if it is truth, it will be true for me, it will be true for you. Truth is universal. And it continues. So it is not limited in space or in time. So the human design of living, if there is something like that, would be, if it is truth and knowledge of it, then it should be, it should work for me, it should work for the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. But we have not been able to come to anything like that yet, which doesn't mean that we can't come to it. This is what we are going to explore here. Okay? Yes, please.
Does knowledge actually guarantee happiness? Because a lot of time it's seen that oblivion is bliss. If we don't know that something better is available for us, we don't have the knowledge of that our life can be better, we are just okay with whatever is going on.
Yeah.
So does it actually guarantee happiness?
Yeah. So the best example of ignorance is bliss is like somebody who is like totally intoxicated, right? Total bliss. Doesn't know, all the bodily functions have also stopped working properly. I mean, can't even walk straight anymore, but is in total bliss. Does that work? Even that same person, after he comes out of that state, regrets it. It's just language. Ignorance is bliss. It doesn't work for us.
I think the issue was about evidence. What she said, that evidence takes long for the society to manifest.
Can.
And in many cases, the period may be so long that the damage may be very high. So how do we recognize the evidence? I think that is the issue.
Yeah, definitely. Good point. So sometimes when we are doing trial and error, and if the durations of results are wrong, then definitely this is an issue. But if we are doing a systematic study, then we can predict results, no? That's how we've been doing till now. See, there is one part where we are not aware of results. We are just doing trial and error in hope things will work out. And one is that we understand the system and try it. And when there is evidence which is going to occur, say, over 10 generations, some part of evidence will also be there in this generation, and then the next one, and then it will build up. It won't happen like this, there's nothing, then something has come up. Evidence builds up. But is our approach systematic, or is it trial and error? That is very important to see. Yes.
I think a word of caution for me in this is that no matter what new approach we try, if we start doing things differently, something will always happen. Things will always change because we're doing things differently. So just something occurring is not evidence that we're moving in the right direction. If we are moving systematically, then we'll have clarity on what steps are going to occur. We will be aware, and we would have predicted it or anticipated them. And so we can actually check and verify, evaluate at each little step. And that's part of evidence of our knowledge of whatever we're trying to evidence.
So this brings to one of our faculties, which is the faculty of evaluation in us, which we need to use very sincerely. We should not we should be very sincere about how we are using it. We should not impose our expectations on while we are doing evaluation. We should evaluate things as they are. Right now, when we are evaluating things, we are doing a lot of injustice there to ourselves and to others, in hope of things will work out later. We have to be absolutely very strict while we are evaluating. This much has happened, so whatever has happened, we should be very honest about it. If something has not happened, we should be very honest about it. Just because we have proposed a theory, maybe say Jivan Vidya theory we are giving to you, and you are trying it out, and whatever is resulting, that should not be considered to be evidence. We should be very clear about it. Did this happen as I had imagined? Or how is it happening right now? What is the difference? You should also be able to see the difference. So if your imagination was misplaced, do you need to do the correction in your imagination part or in your action part? You should be very clear about this. So the evaluation faculty is very important. Imagination faculty, we have really used it very well till now. That's why we have so much evidence of things which we have done. We have even reached another planet like Moon, right? Another entity. But the results what we are going to get, and while we are through the process, when the process is complete, the evaluations, we are not very honest about. So our belief systems, our biases are very strongly distorting our evaluations. We need to be very honest about it. That helps. So the principle I have adopted is be very strict with your own evaluations for yourself and be little lenient in evaluating others. If you need flexibility in evaluation, when you're evaluating others, be lenient, give them space. But when you're evaluating yourself, you have to be very strict. There shouldn't be any escape routes for you when evaluating. Okay? Yes. So happiness comes from knowledge and evidence in living. Knowledge is like harmony in relationships will give us happiness. This is information first. When you understand this, then it becomes knowledge. The words is just information. This workshop is just giving you information, not knowledge. Knowledge is not given by somebody else. You create knowledge by understanding things within you. You are the source of knowledge, nobody else. You are one source, I am one source, we all are sources of knowledge. When whatever information we have, we process it, we understand it, and we are able to relate it to reality, that's when it becomes knowledge. And if it is reality, then you should be able to, some part of it you will be able to live and give the evidence. Without the evidence in living, whatever you might speak, write, think, it's not knowledge. It needs the foundation of evidence to be treated as knowledge. हिंदी में बोलते हैं ना वो कथनी और करनी, walk the talk. That is important. What about facilities? What's the source? Physical chemical objects. Food is a physical chemical object. Cloth is physical chemical object. Building, telecommunication means mobile phones or other things. Transportation means, these are all physical chemical objects. This gives us facilities. Next. So, how do you get fulfilled? How do you fulfill your need for happiness? How do you fulfill your facilities? So, you live in harmony with humans and harmony with nature, which is being called humane conduct. Yeah. This is the means of achieving happiness, for which you'll have to acquire knowledge, live it with evidence. And so human conduct is a lifestyle of acquiring knowledge, living in evidence, and therefore in harmony with everything. Right? And you get facilities through humane occupation. I could have written occupation also, but I think there is a need to stress on that, humane. What is humane occupation? An occupation which results in products and services which are useful for the humankind and nature, which are not in conflict with humankind or nature. Right now, which is the biggest industry in the world? War industry. The biggest budgets. Biggest budgets are in war industry. Weapons. This doesn't come under humane occupation. Or a lot of industry right now, or a lot of practices right now for cheating people, tricking, exploiting. All these are not part of humane occupation. Which leaves us with very little to do, but more than enough. We can live a life in a humane occupation very easily. We'll talk about this when we talk about 4 aspects of human living, in which work is an important aspect. Then we will talk about this in detail. Yeah. Where knowledge and evidence is lies within the human interactions. You learn from other human beings. Right? Certain physical, chemical things you can learn by observing nature, but if you want to understand the systems the natural laws, the natural regulation, the natural balance, then you'll need help from people who have studied it. A child therefore needs help from other human beings. By purely observing things, you can only do a little bit, very little. Suppose every person had to go through the journey without any help from other human beings. They're learning journeys. So they would have to discover each and everything that humankind has discovered till now. What is edible, what is not edible, what is safe, what is unsafe, how to cook food, how to move around, what are weather patterns. Imagine that. We already have so much of knowledge, learnings which are handed over to us by previous generations. We don't have to reinvent the wheel again and again for everything. We give our contribution as taking this journey forward. This is the collective living based or intergenerational collective living. Humankinds are designed for that. We don't only live collectively at the same time, but also across time. That is very important to realize. Like when we were looking at that food that we eat, who has contributed in it? So the contributions are coming from the very first generation of humans from that time onwards. So if you have harmony here, that's the source for this. And if you have harmony here, or through harmonious interactions with nature, you can get your facilities. Because what you need is physical chemical objects which come from nature. You need knowledge, evidence. This lies in the human domain. Any questions on this? Any clarifications? Yes, please.
Can't you also get happiness from human nature relationships? Like if you're sitting on a rock under a tree and you're observing the view and you feel happy, don't you also get happiness from human nature relationships?
Yeah, you can, for a while. Like you go and sit and do that. But your life, if you look at the long life journey, then you realize that actually when you're looking at something, your thoughts are still working. Right? Your memories are still there. And what is there in that? So if things have happened well for you with other people, you'll be enjoying the nature. If things haven't happened well for you, then either you get lost in the imagination at that moment, in which case when this feeling of being lost, when you come out of that, again all these issues will crop up. Right? So for you to even enjoy nature, this has to be in place. Your human interactions.
But it can be a balance, right, of human nature relationships and human relationships.
Yeah. So what we are talking about here is the primary roles, which doesn't mean that other things can't happen. But the primary role, where are we going to get our resources from? We're going to get from physical, chemical resources from the nature itself. And our knowledge and our harmony in relationships from human domain. Yes. Pass the mic.
जब फार्मर क्रॉप्स उगाते हैं तो एक नॉलेज होता है, पर उनको भी बारिश के लिए वेट करना पड़ता है. दैट्स नेचर. तो वो जब बारिश होती है और क्रॉप सही से होता है तो दे फील दैट हैप्पीनेस. सो इट्स अ ह्यूमन नेचर रिलेशनशिप.
So any harmony will give us happiness, no? Basically, harmony is equal to happiness. So where all can we see harmony? So there is within us, internally, harmony between our desires, our thoughts, and our actions. Right? This is one place for harmony. Then our actions and its impact on people around us. That is one place where we can have. Our actions and its impact on nature. That is another place of harmony. Then our collective action and its impact on nature. That is another place of harmony. So wherever there is harmony, wherever we are able to contribute in the harmony, wherever we are able to realize harmony, this will always become source for happiness. But harmony won't happen on its own. You have to make conscious choices for it to happen for you. Because just by watching it, it doesn't work. You have to contribute in it. Because you're part of nature. You can't stay aloof of it. Look, I won't do anything and let the beauty of it happen. It doesn't satisfy you. You want to be part of that beauty. Right? So what farmer is doing is, he's doing some effort, and because nature is orderly, the rains will come, and when they come, the crop will grow, and that gives a joy. Yeah.
We can also look at it, if just to rephrase it, that through harmony in human relationships, we have humane conduct, or that is humane conduct, and through humane conduct we can pass on knowledge and also evidence it.
Yes.
And by doing that, the evidence of it is in lived harmony, which manifests in both human relationships as well as human nature relationships. And in fact, when we're not able to do that, we can end up destroying it.
Yes.
So in the long run, we won't even have that.
Good point. What do you pass on? I mean, a lot of people, we've got some inheritance, right? And we will be giving some inheritance to our next generation. What is our inheritance as humans? Some land, some vehicles, buildings, some bank balance. Is that the inheritance we pass on? That doesn't last too long. The inheritance is actually something to pass on is knowledge, learnings. Making people, our future generations, more knowledgeable and more responsible. We live knowledgeably and responsibly to a certain extent. Maybe the next generation can live in a better way, and the next even better, and the next even better. That's the way. So what we give to them as knowledge and responsible way of living, they add a little to it, they contribute to it, and they give to the next generation. That's the design. If you look in nature, this is happening in all the three orders. In the material order also this is happening. In the plant order it is happening, and even in the animal order it's happening. But there the inheritance is not knowledge and understanding. There what is being happening, the characteristics they give, the qualities. Like mango is an important chemical in nature. It is needed for balance. Similarly, say an apricot is important. Everything which is there in nature is useful for the balance, right? And because it is useful, it needs to continue. How does it continue? Through the seed tree tradition. From seed a tree comes, from the tree a seed comes, then from that seed a tree comes. This tradition, this cycle makes it a continuous thing. And therefore, I can have mango, my children can also have mango, my ancestors also had mango. Right? Oxygen. Do we need oxygen? We all need oxygen. We are consuming oxygen, plants are consuming oxygen, animals are consuming oxygen, but oxygen is still there, 21% in the atmosphere. So there are oxygen cycles which are being maintained in an orderly manner in nature by on its own self-regulation. that the amount of oxygen needed for sustaining this natural balance is always there. We the humans have not understood this, so we have fooled around with some systems, some components of this system, and therefore this balance is now getting slightly disturbed. If we understand it, we can sustain it. So this availability of oxygen started millions of years ago. Drinking water. Without water, life cannot sustain on this planet. It was available millions of years ago, it is available now. It's only us who do not know how to interact with water that we are depleting our own resources. Not only we're depleting the resources for animals, for plant life, and everything. So the nature's way of continuing things is through cycles, in which the characteristics are carried forward from one generation to the other. That is the continuity which is there. That's why it's called order. Humans also have an order. We are knowledge order. We can, whatever humane characteristics we want to carry forward, can only be carried forward through tradition of knowledge and evidence. Okay. Type. Oh, sorry.
So I was also thinking that this happiness can be there in the human nature relationship. Like, for example, I have the knowledge, information, and the knowledge that we have to conserve our resources, and we have to conserve water. And in my lifestyle also, I conserve water. I wash my plate in less water, and I don't waste the water. So while the knowledge also gives me happiness, and the living of it, and the evidence of the in my life, that also gives me happiness. Fine. But that's the primary happiness, na? If I'm not getting along with people in my family or my friend circle, then even if I conserve water, some kida will be there which says, with some dissatisfaction will be there at the background. So only human nature relation, being knowledgeable and showing the evidence in human nature relationship may not be enough for complete all unlimited happiness.
And another simpler fact in continuation of this is, I alone can't conserve water. I can't do it alone. We all can do it together. So an individual has to contribute, but we all have to contribute into this. I can live perfectly, but if others are not contributing, my effort will be lost. I mean, if you look at the traditional communities living in India, they more or less are aligned with the natural cycles. But our urban communities are creating so much pollution that their thousands of years of efforts are lost. We can't do this alone. Our fate, our destiny is together. We are together. We have to realize this. For good or bad, we are together in this. So we can either address the issue or we can be in bliss. Okay. Right. This knowledge, evidence, this is all non-material things. And these physical, chemical objects are all material. Right? So non-material things satisfy our conscious aspect. Material things satisfy our biological aspect of the body. So material things cannot fulfill our conscious needs. And non-material things cannot fulfill your material needs. So when you're hungry, you need food. Right? Merely somebody's love or respect will not address your hunger. That needs to be addressed separately. But your need for respect, trust, right? That also needs to be addressed, for which a different type of action is needed. So to fulfill material needs, we need a certain kind of action, which we are calling above as human occupation. And to address our non-material needs, we need humane conduct. So this is the distinction between happiness and facilities, what we need. Next. So, yes, please.
Knowledge we can take from books. It's a material
information. When you understand the principles behind the information. See, I'll bring a very important concept here. What is a study or what is knowledge, right? We've talked about that it will come from one person to the other, suppose. So a book is also written by somebody, right? So I am seeing some reality. See, I want to inform you about there is a phone here. Right? So phone is a reality. To communicate this reality, language is my tool. Right? I speak the language through my body. I observe this through my conscious. I identify it. Then using the language as a tool, I say something which you hear again through your body, and your conscious interprets that language. And if you are able to see like I was pointing to the phone and you are able to see, then the cycle of communication is complete. Reality, identification, language, identification, reality. This is communication. Now this is about a physical object. What about abstract things? Something like respect. So first of all, we must start realizing that respect, trust, these are also realities, because they are part of life. That's why we are able to identify the difference between respect and disrespect. If it was unreal, we won't be able to do so. Right? So, similarly, like I'm trying to tell you about Jivan and body and happiness and this. So, I'm looking at some reality and using language as a tool, this as a tool, presentation. These are all information. The reality, if you are able to see, then, and that is your own right. That is not my ability to make you see anything. I can just give you information. I can point, see here. But you have to see. When you see the reality, that is knowledge. Knowledge is not information. Otherwise, the most knowledgeable things would be supercomputer. They have zero knowledge. Huge amount of information, but zero knowledge.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something similar, but you've just covered it really. It was the difference between information and knowing of it, basically. So it's like
Please do say.
Well, it's the knowing is the liveliness, right? There
Yes.
has to be a knowing of the knowledge, actually. So there has to be an alive element in there, basically. Because you could have a library full of information, and it wouldn't be a happy library, right? It wouldn't be a unlimitedly happy library. It's and so as you say with your supercomputer, it's but there's a kind of a actually this is going off. We'll talk about it later, I think.
And because this knowledge is so fundamental to us, that's why we are in knowledge order. That's why this human world is being called knowledge order. Because without this knowledge, we will not become orderly. We will not become aligned with the harmony within human beings or with nature. And alignment is what we are calling order. Okay. Go to the next. Okay. The need for happiness is for Jivan, and the need for material facilities is for body. Both needs have to be fulfilled. Right? So we are not saying, like in tradition, it has been said that if you're taking the point of the worldview of materialism, then only material needs have to be fulfilled. There is no reality called non-material needs. That is the part. And in idealism, they say material needs are not important. They are just a distraction. You have to slowly withdraw from that and only focus on non-material things. Here we are saying, no, both are needed. There is a coexistence of material and non-material. That's why this is called coexistentialism. Okay. So both the needs are important and both have to be fulfilled. Material needs are needed from time to time in limited quantity. They come from the nature. They are in form of physical, chemical entities. Right? And you can acquire these through a human occupation. Whereas non-material needs, they lie in the human domain. In the human domain, knowledge and evidence in living, that is what this happiness will come from. And for this, you have to go through a process of learning and living, and that's where you'll find them. And this will result in harmony between humans and humans, in form of harmonious families, harmonious communities, harmonious society, harmonious nation, harmonious global humankind. Like if you're hungry, then somebody respecting you will not, you like it, it will give you happiness, but it will not fulfill it will not feed you. For feeding you, you need food. Right? And similarly, material facilities cannot fulfill non-material. So if you are feeling sad, you can eat as much as you like. It will not get rid of that sadness. It might distract you for some time, but it will add some body weight also, which will again make you sad. Yeah. So a lot of health issues are coming out because of this. We are trying to fulfill our non-material needs through materials. Feeling hungry, eat. Feeling bored, eat. Feeling sad, eat. Feeling lonely, eat. Similarly, shop. Yeah. We're not saying these other things are useless, but their use is defined. If we start treating them more than what they are, then we will end up in a problem. Yeah. Reading a book is good, but you can't always be reading a book. See, if we take a conscious decision that I want to understand this book, then read it. That's one approach. Merely reading it is another approach. To understand something, you need to have some goal. Why do I want to understand this? So right now, a lot of our actions are without awareness of our goal. Then when we form goals, they are very individualistic, or at the most for a group or a sect or some sort of a, but not for universal. We have not yet identified universal goals. We'll talk about that again. But this is important, right? Happiness can give you, or non-material things can give you happiness. Material things can give you comforts or facilities, but comforts and facilities cannot give you happiness, and happiness cannot give you comfort or facilities. Yes, please.
It may sound very funny, but usually what happens with me is when I'm hungry, I'm angry. So usually my family tells me to eat something, and when I can also think, because at that point in time I'm thinking very illogically. Things that I can resolve at a very basic level, I tend to over exaggerate them. So when I eat, and then it becomes very logical for me. So internalizing it, only I resolve them. So would that not be like my material facilities have fulfilled my non-material need at that point? Maybe.
But even before you eat, aren't you aware about the fact, because you're sharing it now, that this is what is happening? Isn't that knowledge? Yeah. So you're using knowledge and giving evidence. Oh, this is my state, this is how the body affects me, and this is how you address it. There is a very prevalent statement which is used. It is in Hindi. It basically says, I'll translate it, what you eat is what you become. You are what you eat, or jaisa an vaisa man. This kind of language is used. So, which basically means, if you're in, the concept is like everything that you eat has an effect on your hormones, and your hormones determine the state of your mind, and therefore that impact can be seen. So if you eat something which agitates you, intoxicates you, then your actions will be according. Right? That's the logic. But if you think of it carefully, then you realize what you're going to eat, put in your mouth, is your own decision. So I want to eat intoxicating thing, I want to eat something which will agitate me, is my own decision. So the decision is first. So the statement in Hindi then becomes, Jaisa man, vaisa an. So you eat according to your level of awareness. Your awareness is not a function of what you eat. Yes, please. Mike, pass the mic.
There's a thing they called emotional eating. Like when we are feeling certain emotions, we tend to eat certain kind of food. And once we notice the pattern, we will understand that when I'm angry, I have coffee, or when I'm sad, I go towards coffee. When I'm happy, I tend to eat pizza or burgers. So there's always a pattern. Like if we observe in ourselves, we will understand that certain emotions triggers our need to eat something, which is not necessarily healthy, but it is kind of programmed, it is kind of conditioned, and we are functioning from that conditioning. So it is not a conscious choice, but it is a subconscious, subconscious choice.
Yeah, it is conditioning. We have associated this because we are humans are creatures of habits. Our living is through habits. So our likes and dislikes are also our habits. Right? Nothing more to it. except for that we are habituated in something, that's what we like. Right. Yeah.
I would add to that though, that at times if we're not able to identify whether, say, we're feeling sick or tired or actually sad, we can even misplace it the other way around. Where we're not actually sad, we're tired, or we're low on sugar. And so then if we eat something sweet, we start feeling better. And it was the other roundabout misplacement.
Yeah, that also is happening. Okay. So any questions on this? Any clarifications? So the message from this is, you have two kinds of needs. One are material needs, one are non-material needs. For material needs, you need specific things from time to time in certain quantity. Non-material needs are different need, and you need something else. Both can be sourced from different areas. For both, you need to do some definite action. This need cannot be fulfilled by things which fulfill the other need. So materials cannot fulfill your non-material needs, and the non-material things cannot fulfill your material. Yes.
So theoretically, like, I am able to understand it, and I'm able to differentiate between the two. Just like, but if I have to think about, like, just practically that, say, often I have a tendency to miss breakfast because I wake up like just like if my office starts at 9, I'll wake up at like 8:50, and I'll just like go to the bathroom, and then I'll just like sit on my laptop, and my first meal would be my lunch, and often like before lunch I start feeling very like this, like, tired and things, and obviously that's because of like I haven't eaten a meal since morning. But this happens more on the days when I have like an important presentation or like a submission or something. So there's like a lot of anxiety also. So even, and on those days I'm not even able to sleep that well, or so anyway, like there is time when I can have breakfast, but I don't feel like having breakfast. So like even though conceptually they might be different, and but actions are very close to each other. It's just so hard to say that if I am feeling like this right now, is it because of my anxiety, which is more of a Jeevan problem, or is it because of I haven't had food, which is more of a body problem?
So you can work on this and rule this out very easily, no? Say for a week you can try one thing. Suppose, let's assume it is anxiety. I try to address the anxiety and rule it out. If it doesn't work, then say, let's assume it's I've not eaten, that is the reason. So then you can understand yourself better. See, and if it is a repeated pattern, the question should be, why am I repeating this? Why is this? Because you can see this, you are able to even express that this is happening, and we all have gone through this. You're not alone in this, but there are some repeated habits that we do, and there what I was talking about earlier was, we are not being sincere in evaluation of ourselves. So somewhere or the other, the sincerity is a form of discipline, and because by habit we are indisciplined right now. So that indiscipline takes over. Even though we can see the consequences, we say, because this free will or freedom of action, I've chosen this. This is my way. That thing which Sid was talking the other day, that the freedom versus structure. This becomes, that conflict is there again, because we have not yet been able to place the structure and this freedom in ourselves. We want the fruits of the structure, but we want it through freedom. Whereas freedom will give us some results and structures will give us. There is a harmony in between them. There is a balance between them, which we need to understand. So actual problem lies there. And because this is a very common problem, I'm able to tell.
So I just want to share something. So I mean, I recently graduated college, and I could see that as the exam weeks starts, people, because there's a lot of academic stress, people need to perform, they need to get a job, and so on and so forth. People start binge eating a lot, salt, sugar, and so on and so forth, and that immediately sort of lowers your cortisol levels and so on, for sure. But it also causes anxiety because you're so accustomed to eating high salt and sugar that you just start getting very restless if you don't get it at those intervals. My point being that I didn't know that when I entered college. I didn't know of this, that okay, psychological factors can also cause me to feel hungry, whereas I'm not really hungry, and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, and I don't think that a lot of people still know this. So basically what I want to acknowledge is there's this inequality in knowledge also, that you can start fulfilling your non-material needs, which is basically to handle stress and so on and so forth, through feeding yourself more and so on. So, and I don't think a lot of people know this. Even it took me 5 semesters to understand, okay, this is a problem in a lot of people and in myself also. And yeah, I mean, that inequality in knowledge can just, I don't know, cause a lot of problems. So yeah.
Yes.
I feel this is also conditioning that we're brought up on. Like when a child cries, for example, is not happy about something, most people want to suppress that unhappy emotion, and they say that child, chocolate cow, or eat chocolate, or watch the bird, or watch a TV show to distract you. So I think before we are conscious, before we know that there's another approach, so we actually automatically, when we are unhappy later on, we go to something to put in our mouth, And it could be food, it could be cigarettes, it could be alcohol, something to kind of distract, to suppress, something that maybe is not allowed or not validated. And so I think that's a kind of a habit we actually learn, and we teach our kids by doing that same distracting thing rather than being with them and helping them to process or understand at some point.
This conditioning is happening since childhood. Yeah, this is a very right example. Like, the child is crying because it's hungry, we feed it. When it's crying because it's not getting attention, we again feed it. So this is happening.
There was one example of I have a niece, and she used to live in Noida, and the mother is working. So she noticed, she was talking to us, and she noticed, and she said that the height of boredom is when you open the refrigerator and you can find nothing to eat. So she was able to identify that boredom is different, hunger is different, the food in the refrigerator is just not going to fulfill the boredom. It was one of those moments when she realized that.
Okay. Shall we move ahead? Any more clarification questions on this? Yeah, please. Pass the mic. Pink mic, Dedi. Pass me. That works better.
Just that this reliance on disciplining ourselves, and evaluating constantly, whether the reason that we are facing this is because of this or because of this, and constantly asking why. It's not natural. It is a very so I just feel like if it is not natural, like you said, Jeen Vidya would lead us to the natural order.
Yeah.
And it's a unified system. So if it will lead us to the natural, why is this so hard to do?
So being natural and being hard are two different things. First of all. Okay. Like eating natural food, healthy food, right now is very hard. Because we don't have any access to it. All the food which is being grown is with chemicals and stuff like that. and we are over processing food and eating it. So the eating natural and eating and it being hard, these are two separate issues. So we are habituated in functioning in one way, and we interpret freedom in one way, right? Freedom is like whatever I wish to do, I want to do, right? So that's how we look at it. But whatever I do, what we don't connect with is whatever I do is an action, and every action has an impact. It results into something. No action can be resultless, and the result again impacts us. This is a natural law. So I can keep on doing anything I want, but whatever I do is an action. It will result in something, and that result in return will impact me and others around me. So where this will go, you can extrapolate. So if I understand what actions result in what, then I can choose. This choice of doing the right is actually the freedom, where you need moral strength. Moral strength comes from knowledge. And both these things, for gaining knowledge and practicing your moral strength, are disciplines. It's a discipline. So because we are not habituated in it, it seems difficult. It is difficult at that time. Doesn't only seem difficult, it is difficult at that time. But you achieve so many difficult things. Humans are known for achieving difficult things. This is not that difficult. Anything? Yes.
So if we do make this distinction and we say that happiness is not material, it is Jivan, so is it then happiness is not to be felt but only to be known in some sense?
No, you feel it.
So then it is a state of sensation only.
Your feelings, some feelings are rooted in sensations, and other in knowledge. Feelings come from knowledge, awareness also, as well as sensations.
But it is being sensed, felt in that way, in a material way. So because if I assume that the distinction would be that there is pleasure and happiness, and what I get from, say, eating things that I like is pleasure, right? But the distinction being that is something which is maybe more stimulating or less stimulating, but what happens when I feel happy is somehow immaterial. But the point that I'm making is that then it becomes something which is material, but only maybe in degree there is some difference, in that it is less stimulating than eating ice creams or whatever.
So first thing is, like, when we say sensation, then I interpret it as something, an input which is coming through your senses, right? So something which has interacted with your body, that signal is going to your brain, and through the brain the Jivan is interpreting it. And the most fundamental interpretation is you accept it or you don't accept it, right? And you accept it, then you feel certain kind of a well-being, and if you don't accept it, you feel a certain kind of. So that happens with sensation. We all know that. We all live on basis of this. But then there is also when you perceive something through knowledge, there also this acceptance and non-acceptance takes place. Svikriti, asvikriti, right? Accepting, non-accepting. So if you accept, then there is a sense of well-being, and if you don't accept, then there is a, like, I'm giving you some sort of explanation, and you can see the flaw in logic. So my assertion you do not accept, and if you see that I'm insisting on it, it will cause some sort of a state in you, like. Next. So the lack of education, or we can use the word knowledge or learning, the lack of education about the conscious needs of Jivan in humans has resulted in beliefs and practices where humans keep trying to be happy through acquiring and consuming material facilities. So our family structures, our community structures, our social structures are propagating this. They are based around this. Next. The need of lasting happiness, which originates from conscious aspect of humans, can be identified properly and addressed fully through the study of humans in harmonious coexistence. If we study humans properly, then we can understand this. We are just scratching the surface right now, little bit, but we can study this deep. Study of harmonious coexistence, when completed, enables the person to fulfill his or her needs for lasting happiness by living on the basis of humanness in relationships, family, society, nature. So this living on basis of knowledge for the purpose of alignment, this is being called humaneness, humaneness, I think. No, humanness. So we're defining it in a particular way. That first of all, the conscious choice that I want to live in alignment with things. For that, first accepting the fact that I am part of nature and nature is a system, is in order, right? It is governed by some laws, and therefore humans also are governed by some laws. So we'll also be going to that part where we'll study the nature and see whether it is governed by any laws or not, right? So once we study that, then because of these choices we study it and we live it, then we can be in harmony in our families, in our society, with nature. Right? That's the main thing. So the confusion of this material, non-material needs to be resolved within us. This will help us to live in harmony. This is one of the fundamental issues. So this is an answer to the question, what I am. I am a human being. I am Jivan and body. My needs are material and non-material. And material needs need to be addressed. Non-material needs need to be addressed. So now we'll come to 4 dimensions of human living, because we are going to study humans now. So there are 4 dimensions of living. So I've given a sequence of it: work, behavior, intellect, and spiritual. Okay. So the occupational aspect is being called work. The interpersonal aspect is being called behavior. The psychological aspect is being called intellect. And realizational aspect, where knowledge takes place, is being called spiritual. Every human being wants fulfillment in all 4. If we are not fulfilled in all 4 aspects, we always keep feeling this is not complete. Suppose your work areas or your occupational aspect, you are feeling fulfilled, but your behavior aspect is not yet fulfilled. So you will feel some incompleteness. If you are not intellectually resolved, however well you think your work and behavior are, you still feel certain gaps. And all this can only be fulfilled through the spiritual realization. So this is the deepest, then this, and on basis of this, these 2. But the fulfillment starts in living. First you can address this very easily, because this is body, very simple. We understand the laws, what we need for the body, we can address this. But for addressing this, some clarity is needed here. This requires a lot more work. We'll be talking about this in detail. Behavior aspect, what does it mean? What is the fulfillment in the behavior aspect? Okay. For that, some clarity is needed here. When these two fulfillments have been achieved, then you can address this even more deeply. And for this, the full awareness is needed here. And this is possible for each and every person, provided they make such a conscious decision that we want to go along this path, and they put in efforts, and we'll study it properly. Then it can happen. So work, behavior, intellect, and spiritual. These are the 4 dimensions of human living. All human beings need fulfillment in all these 4 dimensions. Incompleteness in any of these dimensions will be problematic, which basically means it will lead to unhappiness. This, though, we all know, if this is not fulfilled, it leads to problem. We all know that. This also we are quite aware of. If our interpersonal relationships are not working out, then there is a lot of unhappiness. Then there is a need for us to understand how things are happening, why something happens, right? How everything is connected with each other. So how things happen, how things are connected, the how part is understood here, and the why part is understood here. We'll get more clarity as we go forward. But these are the 4 aspects of living, or dimensions of human living. Okay. Next. Just go back to the previous slide. So here, basically, these 2 parts, intellect and speech, I've showed it above the figure of the person, indicating these lie in the conscious domain, and this is with the body, behavior and work. These 2 aspects are fulfilled as through the body, right? Physically also there is some engagement here. Yeah, go. So the dimension of behavior and work in humans are expressed through the body. The intellectual and spiritual dimensions in humans exist in the jiva. Okay? This is quite simple. Dimensions of work and behavior are governed by the intellectual dimension. So, what does that mean? Before we do anything, whether it's in the domain of work or behavior, we think about it. Our thinking could be complete or incomplete. Depends on our level of awareness. But we do think. This is what I'm going to tell this person. This is what I'm going to do for this person. Right? You think about this. This happens in your intellectual aspect. Right? Similarly for work, I'll do this, I'll do that. All this, there is a thought behind it. And you try to have reasons for it and justifications for it. That's all happening in your intellectual dimension. Okay. The intellectual dimension can have complete clarity only in the light of awakened spiritual dimension. So the spiritual dimension is either dormant or awakened. It can be in 2 states. When it is fully awakened, the intellect also comes into its full bloom. Otherwise, it is only working partially. And work and behavior are totally dependent on the intellectual dimension. How you perceive things happens in your intellect, and if it is working partially, then your work and behavior is determined by that partial intellect, and therefore is not fulfilling either to you or to people around you or to the nature. So the real thing becomes then spiritual realization, which will fulfill your intellectual aspect, and therefore which will enable you to live with harmonious interactions in your work and in your behavior. That's the full message of this thing. Awakening of one's spiritual dimension is possible through dedicated study of coexistence. So the tool for awakening is study. And as I have earlier said, study is a systematic process. It's a discipline. So any questions on this? Can you identify within you, these are four things, four dimensions to a certain extent? Work and behavior is very easy, even the intellectual part is not. So the only doubts would be at the spiritual thing. So when we come to it, I'll explain that. But still, if somebody wants to ask anything at this point, you're most welcome. Okay, next. So to understand these four aspects, how they work, we'll explore these two powers that we have as human beings. One is the power of imagination, and the other is the power of action. Right? The power of willful action, or popular terminology, it is called free will. Right? So, but I prefer this language to it. Power of imagination and power of willful action. Right? Naming, just because there is a decision involved here. Willfulness is associated with that. Right? So when I say every human being has it, that means you also have it. So do you have the power of imagination? You must check. Daniel, do you have power of imagination? Okay. And power of willful action? Good. So what we mean by willful action is we act according to our decisions. I decide I will do this, that is also a willful action, and I decide I don't want to do this, that is also a willful action. Okay, so we think about it, make a decision, and do accordingly. That's a willful action.
But sometimes you also make unwillful actions because, like, you do it without thinking and then you regret doing it because you've done rashly or without thinking beforehand.
Yeah. But did you make any choice of doing it? It might not be based on some thought, but you still did make a choice, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have willful action, but I also have unwillful action.
Yes. Okay. Circumstances sometimes force you to do something. Yeah. Okay. But you do have power of willful action also, right? Good. So these are the two powers. To understand this, we'll go to a diagram. Okay. How much time is there? 10 minutes. So, okay. So I'm trying to represent this bubble like power of imagination, which lies in our conscious aspect, right? And the power of willful action we enact through our body. Any action we do it as a conscious plus body, like as a full human being, right? So, next. This power of imagination lies in the virtual world, in our intellect. It's a virtual world. It's a world which we create in our imagination. It is based on certain inputs from the real world, but we make the full picture by using our own logic, our own reasoning, which might be rooted in reality or might not be rooted in reality. So that's what I'm calling virtual world, where imagined or assumed laws, regulation and balance are functional. I'll explain what I mean by this. And the action which we do takes place in the real world. Right? Any action I do, it happens in the real world. But before the action, I'm imagining this action, I'll do this and this will happen. This I imagine through my power of imagination. This is in the conscious aspect. And the real world is governed by natural laws, natural regulation and natural balance. Right? Everything happening in the world is governed by natural laws. Like this will fall, governed by a natural law. Right? This is in the real world. But in the conscious part, or the what you call the virtual world, I can imagine I'll leave this and it will keep floating. Can I imagine that? Can you imagine that? So what happens? In my imagination it's still here, but in the real world, the real laws operate on it. In the imagination, the law which I think will operate, operates there. So there is a gap in our intellect and in the real world. Our imagination works according to what we think is the principles governing the world. And what happens is what is real. Right? So we can imagine, I will shout at this person and then this person will understand. I can imagine that, and I can also do it. Then I see the result. This person didn't understand anything. In fact, this person became angry with me, stopped talking to me. Right? So, but I did imagine that. So our imagination is based on our half-baked knowledge of things. Why half-baked? Because we have only taken some sensory inputs and that also not very carefully. Okay. Next. So in this world, what we do then? So our power of imagination we use, and which brings us some idea. I'll do this. That's an idea, right? Then I execute that idea through my body, which results in an action in form of some work or some behavior, right? Because it's an action, it will have a result. So there is some result. Now the result, if it is what I had imagined, if it is according to that, then it will be acceptable. If it is something what I had not imagined, then it is unacceptable. So when it's acceptable, then I think I'm happy. I feel that sense of well-being. But if it is unacceptable, then I get this sense of unhappiness. I wanted to do this, but this happened. I too loved my friend, but she still got upset. Right? So, but if this is happening, this cycle is, there is no problem. Right? The real problem lies here when this happens. What do we do then? When things don't go the way we thought they will go, what do? What is our evaluation? We do evaluation. So the first knee-jerk reaction is, maybe I didn't do it correctly. There was a problem in execution, implementation problem. So we try to fix those first. But maybe some iterations later we realize, oh, problem doesn't lie here. Problem might lie here. This idea itself might not be right. So we bring in an alternate idea. But the problem is, the alternate idea is also rooted in this. So again, the same thing happens. And if this happens several times, we come to conclusion, this is not in our control. Nothing can be done about it. So, if this is happening, distract yourself. Go out for a drive. Right?
If the result is quantifiable and the result what I expected is better than what I expected, then I'm happy.
Yeah, then this is happening, no? See, that's why acceptable result is written. So that is acceptable to you. Better than you imagined.
So then if it is okay, when it is unacceptable, we change the idea or we go for a drive.
Yeah. I didn't hear you. Give the mic. It is an idea. Yeah. Maybe it's working. That's why we have so many roads and so many vehicles. Right? Time? 5 minutes. Okay. I think I won't go beyond this right now. There is more to it. We'll do this in the afternoon session. But any questions or any clarifications on this up till now? Anything? I just gave, no? A child is making a mistake. We see they're not doing the right thing. So I'll shout at it and he'll correct its action. So the idea, you act, you shout, and he stops talking to you. That's not acceptable to you. And it doesn't stop the child from doing the same mistake again later. Yeah.
I have a question. So I was thinking about this power of willful action. My question is, does everyone have an equal amount of power of willful action? Like, for example, if someone is, let's say, more courageous, or they have a very huge vocabulary such that they understand the world better, that person might have a higher power of willful action than someone who's, let's say, less courageous, or someone who does not have that much education, or not that rich vocabulary or something. So what I want to ask is, I think that there are some degrees of power of willful action, but yeah, I mean, is that true or not?
Okay, very good question. So there are 2-3 important things in this. First is, potentially it's equal. As a potential, it is the same. Okay, but in usage, it seems it is different, right? Which is what you are asking, right? Why is it different? Because in humans, our beliefs are our environment. How we see the circumstances is a belief. Like if we are sitting here and we think everybody is friendly, our behavior will be in a certain manner. And my usage of my power of action would be in a certain way. But if I would say nobody cares for me in this room, then my usage of this action would be different. Both are beliefs. I have not actually yet studied this and read the situation well, right? So what our environment, how we see where we are, our circumstances, are rooted in our beliefs, right? So because believing is one of our faculties, very important faculties, it's needed. But it is not believing when associated with knowing and believing. That is one way of looking at things. There you become a lot more freer, and therefore your power of willful action comes to full bloom. But if it is only believing without knowing, then you get limited. So those are the kind of things, if you see the variation as based on that. Like if we look at various communities where these communities are rooted in beliefs and not in knowing, then you see that they only limit actions in a certain way. But potentially they can live in a full manner.
Just a slight follow-up. So, I mean, there are certain groups amongst our own societies that we know are, systematically discriminated against. For example, if you take women, or if you take people belonging to lower castes, or so on and so forth, they are discriminated against, and they know that if they just follow, like, I don't know, go after what they desire or something, they will face the consequences, right? Because the world is very unequal for them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, where do we start thinking there then? Like, they might have the same potential as someone else or someone who's more privileged, but yeah.
So their belief system, see, the usage of this power of willful action comes from the confidence we have. And the confidence comes from the fact how we see our circumstances. So because the circumstances are oppressive, so that you do have less confidence in doing things on your own. You would rather follow somebody in authority, follow their actions. So, but it's not acceptable to you. You're inside, something is happening within you, right? And which is painful and also depressing and everything. All those things are happening. So, and now the next part is, how do we reach them, right? How do they realize everything? So the people like you and I are privileged. At least we should become free. Then we can become source of inspiration for the unprivileged ones. We cannot preach what we don't live. We cannot teach what we don't live ourselves. So this is all, knowledge has traditionally been like this. It is empowering. It is meant to empower everybody. Right now it has been hijacked by profiteering. That is the problem. So we have to realize that part and address it. We are the first person who has to become free, come to our full potential. Then only we can help others coming to the full potential. You can't give something which you don't have. Okay? For the time being, let's meet at 3 o'clock. Let's have lunch. Let's digest this and the lunch. Thank you.